Welcome to I See What You Mean, a podcast about how people get on the same page or don't, or perhaps shouldn't. Today my guest is Andy Robinson. Andy is Senior Advisor and Vice President of the Resiliency and Disaster Recovery Practice at Hill International. Andy's also a longtime federal government consulting colleague and friend. Andy, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, Lou.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Why don't you give listeners a short bio about yourself?
Sure. So I started way back when with Xerox Systems, and I actually was a computer science grad and did programming, if you can believe that, and systems analysis design and design systems for NASA, the insurance industry, etc. And then from there, I moved into a Gartner Group, and I actually managed the East Coast for them and consulted on matters of IT.
Yeah.
Then I did a long stint with ICF and was senior vice president. Worked a bit for RG and other small businesses, and now I'm at Hill International.
So a mix of some IT work, coding, right, software development, and management consulting that I knew you in.
That's right. It started off really with the coding, because then I had a really good understanding of business process, and most of my work was in automating those various business processes, even to the extent where I was automating the launch of the shuttle in one engagement with NASA.
Interesting.
That was a real interesting project, actually. It was right after the Challenger crash.
Okay. Yeah.
I went down there and lived right off base. Xerox sent me down there, and we worked on a new preamble to the actual what's called the LCS, Launch Command Sequence.
Okay.
So it was an interesting engagement,
I bet it was.
And we actually were part of the solution in getting the shuttle program.
I didn't realize that you're vice president of resiliency and disaster recovery. I don't think I realized that thread ran back that far. That's really what you were doing then with
What ran back
that thread in your work.
Yeah. That's an interesting point, actually, because as I look back throughout my career, it was like I was these very pivotal moments of career history. I was pulled into disasters or things, something going very wrong and something monumental. And the same way I got pulled into Katrina and other events like that, Ebola, et cetera. It was just like, and it wasn't a great career plan on my part.
It just turned out that way, huh? That's interesting.
Yeah. I think it was more a result of, hey, there's a guy who knows process and systems and has been engaged in high pressure situations. Let's get him to see if
that all makes sense. That part makes sense. You're pretty cool under pressure. We've talked about an interesting idea that hasn't come up yet in a podcast, the idea of knowing where you're headed, being on the same page with yourself as maybe a prelude or a prerequisite to being on the same page with others. So tell me more about your thinking on that.
Well, I think in life you can go through a career and have your job progression be a result of expectations that others put on you. Mm-hmm. And I think I've had this epiphany more than once in my career, and I think it helped me pivot from one industry or one type of engagement to another. And it's really getting out of that mode and really sort of determining what expectations do you have of yourself and reevaluating where you are, and is this really where you want to be, and are you headed in the direction that you want to be going in? And I've done this, I've had to do this on several occasions, and I think as I continue my career continues, I think I've almost got it down pat as to how you take stock of life and reevaluate, those expectations.
Well, that's a big issue there, a big topic we can spend some time on. Being on the same page with yourself, knowing where you're headed, your own expectations. That has to do with things that are personal, like what you want out of life, maybe ethics and morality, maybe more career related. It spans a lot of ground. Let me ask you this question, and we just see where this goes. There's a funny line about our careers are all make more sense when we look back on them than when we're looking forward, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And we see the patterns, we see the threads. Did you have a feeling along the way of what was right or better? It's like playing that game of when you were a kid and you were looking for something and someone told you you were warm, you were cold. Did you have that feeling
yeah.
of something that felt more right or felt less right as you were making career decisions? And did you tune
Oh
into
yeah,
that and try to and sort of be guided by it like a guidance system?
yeah. Yeah, well, I would absolutely had that feeling on several occasions. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, that probably precipitated my departure from certain industries and in certain
Mm-hmm.
companies based on this sort of, you get this feeling that you're not right with
Mm-hmm.
the universe and
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
you're not being true
Yeah.
to yourself, and you're getting up and going to work and you're really not liking it, and it's really not you, and you really don't want to be here. you know
Yeah.
then then you really got to say, go home at night and have that talk with the wife, and or
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
make your decision that, hey, I'm going to make a change here. Something's got to give.
Let's talk
And
about
yeah, I had a point.
let's talk
Yeah,
about this. I have two. I have two. Let's talk
yeah,
about that some because it's as important if you're in your 20s or your 30s or 40s to be true to yourself, but maybe it's a little bit more. Maybe there's some challenges that differ in your 20 when you're younger than when you're older. Maybe not. That's we can you can challenge me on that
yeah,
if you
yeah,
want. But I remember being younger and having some career aspirations. And then what I thought of most, I think what I focused on most at the time was did studying something or learning more about something or a certain position advance the career aspirations. That's not necessarily a one to one, like a correspondence between career aspirations and what you're talking about. There's not necessarily a one to one correspondence between one's career aspirations and being true to oneself. They can align, and we want them to, but they
yes,
don't automatically. So you've got
no,
to sort of make that. And maybe when I was younger, I wasn't as clear on that. And
right,
maybe folks listening to this our episode, I'm 61. We're at a point in our career where we ought to know more about those things, know more about ourselves in those ways,
right, right, right.
and harder when we were younger. So how'd that work for you?
Well, um, I would say that it came down to a couple of factors, and you mentioned one a little bit earlier. It can come down to, are you working for a company that you trust the management and respect what the company's doing
Yeah,
and is going in a direction that you support or not?
yeah,
And on a couple occasions, I've had to say, I don't know about this company's going where the leadership's taking it. I think I need to sort of open up my paradigm and
yeah.
think about other careers and other companies. And usually I've taken that step and exited and from those situations. And I think you got to be smart about that, because you just got to know, for whatever reason,
Yeah,
that the cheese for you has moved. Now, it
yeah,
could be a lot of reasons. It could be, yes, the leadership is getting desperate to meet their numbers and they're doing strange things, or it could be the market's
right,
changed,
right,
or
right.
the product line is not right.
Yeah,
Whatever it is, it doesn't really matter a whole lot, does it? I mean, you
right.
you sort of figure out that
Yeah,
for you, this is not the right place anymore.
yeah.
And when the universe tells you that, you'd be wise to wake up and make the move. And anytime I've delayed, Lou, I've regretted it. I've regretted it. I only wish I'd moved sooner.
So alignment, that's a really good point. Alignment of one's values and principles in work, so to the team, to the unit you're in, to the company, is a great way to think about maybe a kind of a good effective measure. You could ask yourself, do I see that alignment? Is that alignment missing? And I think
Right.
that's a great signal, for lack of a better word, or cue for
Yeah.
I'm in the right place or I'm not in the right place, or I was and it's changing because that
It's
happens.
changed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
happens. And then that causes us to ask ourselves questions about what we want next. So if we think there's a misalignment, we know we might look for a better alignment somewhere. But we also reach points in our lives where maybe what we value, our principle, I don't want to say our principles change. I don't think that's, but what we value at a next job or a next phase of our career could change.
Yes.
Earlier in our career, we might have valued learning opportunities, exposure to things. It might have been a salary that was attractive, but you get a couple moves into your career and you start to maybe refine what matters to you next. You might want a leadership opportunity. You might want to learn to manage people, right? So those things evolve over time, and then you look for opportunities to match that. It's interesting because you still could piece something together that isn't entirely. You got to walk. That's that true to yourself. That true to yourself point. That true to yourself. The question and answer. It's always got to be the ultimate one. If I do this next thing for reason X Y Z, is that what's best for me? Am I being true to myself in some larger, maybe cosmic way?
Yeah. Lou, I think some of it is a very conscious thought that you're thinking these things through, and then some of it is just sort of the gut that's telling you, hey,
Yeah.
now's the time. Open up your horizons and start to think about where you might fit next, or in some cases, and I made this conscious choice, you want to think about where the economy's going, where the world's going, what are the new technology trends, etc.
Yeah.
And as Wayne Gretzky said, skate to where the puck's going to be.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And you'd be better to get there sooner than the others. And I've been fortunate in being able to sort of judge that and oftentimes do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of managing your career smartly, right? You can have all these reasons back at the other company, and they really don't matter. For whatever reason, it's just not there for you now. And so now you got to think about, okay, I'm going to make a move because that, my gut, my head, whatever's, or my manager is telling me this company is no longer right. And so you have to think about, okay, well, where am I going to skate to the puck?
Yeah.
And figure that out. And it'd be better again. I would advise younger people to don't sit around crying over spilt milk or playing the blame game or wondering, was I at fault? It's really, in most cases, as I see this as a manager and in my career, it's a good thing that's about to happen to you, right? Mm-hmm. It's a good thing, and you just got to get to the other side. You got to take that step through the door and get to the other side and get it figured out, and then you'll be so much happier with yourself.
I'm going to say this. I'm sure you would agree. It's probably always smart to do a little after action review on something, right? This is let's just let me just size up the situation for what I think I've learned, but that's very different than getting stuck on something or dwelling on something or letting the negative feelings and that negative energy that comes with blaming or mourning. Like, you might have thought it was your ideal job and something changes on you and you're like, well, there's nothing better coming my way, but that's not true.
Yeah.
If you think of it, if you have that mindset, you hamstring yourself. But if you say, well, it was good for X, Y, and Z now.
Yeah.
I always like to, for myself, wonder, how can I parlay that into what I do next, right? What can I launch? What can I step off of this to what happens next? And that's what you're saying is the beauty of that moment.
Well, it is, and I would also say that how do you do that, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, how do you sort of reinvent yourself, if you will?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of there's a lot of lessons I've learned in that area, and I'll throw out just a couple. One is I wanted to, I left the company and I wanted to do just straight up consulting on various topics. And so I said, what do you want to consult on? I thought that through. I said, cybersecurity, more on the systems area. So destiny smiled upon me, and I got the opportunity to do a seminar on Bright Talk on cybersecurity. So, boom, I put that on LinkedIn and several places like that. And so you can go out there and build yourself a brand.
Yeah, right.
And then with that brand, take that forward and start to talk and meet people in those industries and, find your door into that industry. I didn't come out think about it. No one comes out of college trained and ready to advise NASA or ready to step into a leadership role in Katrina or any other thing.
Right.
So you're always constantly training and retraining and reinventing yourself in order to get to these skills levels. And there's no school that teaches you to be a COO or CEO, et cetera, right? That's just accumulation of experience that you picked up and others identify you can do this, and boom, you're in. And I think that people can advance their career if they take the ownership of reinventing and constantly training themselves. And I think that's a key to keeping your career on track as you see it.
Yeah, and I think it's key to keeping yourself fresh, meaning that you're enthusiastic about what you're doing and you're doing it well. I like that notion of reinvention. I want to dwell on it for a minute, but I wanted to add to something you said, which was, you were talking about no one comes out of college ready for those certain things. Actually, as we probably go through our careers or relationships in life,
right,
being a parent, we're always probably one step behind what we wish we knew when we needed to know it at that moment. and
Absolutely.
So there's always a learning curve, right? And some of them are big. Parenting is big. Of course, you have years to do it, but you could take positions in a same company, switch companies. You could take, like you said, roles you're not entirely prepared for.
Oh, yeah.
So what's interesting is if you're not prepared for some of the, let's say there's some technical subject matter, expertise that you, when I had become, when I was a COO, I hadn't been one before. There were things about being a COO I didn't know. I think it's interesting to think about, what do I have that enables me to pick up on that? So let's talk about that a little bit, because you've done this probably several times. So what did you think was your foundation as a person, as maybe a leader or manager, but certainly as a human being, that enabled you to go in and start to pick up what you needed to accumulate to be good in that role, but you didn't have on day one or day 100?
Yeah. For me, I think one thing that I look, and part of this is personality, part of it is acquired skill sets. But when I get introduced to a new situation, first of all, you got to imagine they didn't put you in that situation because everything's running perfectly smoothly.
Good point.
I've never been challenged with an easy softball job. I'm still looking for that one, Lou. I've yet to find it or be offered that job. So everything, everything I've gotten is, we just fired this guy, or performance is horrible, or whatever the issue is. And so I've always sort of gone in and tried to understand, first of all, how the organization get to the spot that it's in. Then start to think about, well, where can it go? And usually those are related, because if it ends up in a dead end, then it probably was targeting the wrong place to go. For many, many years. And you need to figure that out. So I like to listen and talk and discuss for a long period of time, and then sort of, reinvent the strategy, the direction, and maybe in some cases the organizational culture to get you there, and begin to communicate that to people and get people bought into that. Mm-hmm. But if you don't do that pretty quickly, and you come in and you just try to ride the tide for what's been going on there forever, people are going to say, well, you didn't turn this organization around. You didn't do anything for us, right?
Yeah.
And so understanding that, and I will say I got some great training at Xerox about leadership and management, and they really had some wonderful people to teach you, how do you go in and turn an organization around? And I did it at Xerox several times. So when I went to other organizations, I pretty much knew it was almost like a formula. I knew what to do in order to turn things around. And I would tell you, one of the first things you do is you clean up all the systems, all the records, all the BS. You get your systems and performance numbers straightened out. And usually there's a lot of junk in there, and you got to throw out the junk and start over and say, this is where we are, right? Have this moment of frankness, brutal honesty with the organization that says, look, I filtered through all this. This is the way the situation is now.
Yeah.
I've got some ideas, and I'd like to work with you on your ideas. And I think we can get this pointed in the right direction.
Yeah.
Who wants to talk? Who wants
there you go. Well, and that's
I have a funny story once. I took over an organization, and it was bad. It was the numbers for that year. There was no way to get them turned around. And I said, I told the group, I said, we're not going to make our numbers this year. I'm not sure that, we even have all the right people to do the numbers. I said, but next year we're going to be number one, not just in the region, but in the world. We're going to be number one. And I looked around and I saw the look on people's face. And some people were scoffing and laughing. And some were like, okay, how do we do that? Well, I made a lot of decisions in that 1 to 2 minute period of time about who stays and who goes. Yeah. And next year and the year after, we were number one in the world. We did it, because I was left with the people that thought we could and got rid of the people that thought it was a joke.
Usually, when you take over an operation that needs, we can always improve it. Operations always improve an organization, but when you take over one that's in need of it, there are people in it who want to do better. There are people in it who want to enjoy their work more, who want to enjoy going to work more, who want to enjoy what they contribute to something more, get more out of it. So they're ready to put into it. Yeah. They're eager for someone to take over who's going to take them in a direction that they can get behind. And so that's what you did. And like you said, sometimes there was a moment in time for somebody that they weren't a good fit. And they wanted something else, and they wanted to go 3 degrees left, and you were going 15 degrees right, and that's okay. That's life.
Oh yeah, that is life. I mean, and I've had the conversations at companies where they said we're going in this direction, and they made it clear that I wasn't going to be going in that direction with them, and I was like, you know what? You're right.
Yeah, right.
I am not going to go in that direction. Yeah. I am going to take this opportunity to leave, and it worked out.
Something just occurred to me. I want to mention, especially for someone who's in that situation, maybe right now or they're listening. It's really important that you look up over the situation and be careful not to personalize it in the sense that you have failed.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying we can't know if someone did or didn't fail in a particular situation, but there are some things that are, the word I think of is structural. We're talking about things that are structural in nature. If an organization's going to become more of something and less of something else, and that's not a fit for you, that's not a flaw. That's a fit issue. And you must be careful not to say to think that you failed because you don't fit. Those are two different things. If you didn't fit because you didn't try, that's different. But if you don't fit because things are heading in different directions, this is an opportunity that, in a hard time, it's an opportunity for you to find or create a better fit. And let's go back to a little bit of reinvention, because it's a thread or a theme that would, I think, necessarily run through change over time in a career. It might also run through relationships over time, and not a work relationship, personal relationships over time. Some amount of reinvention you do of yourself when your kids are infants in preschool and elementary school and middle school and high school and grown. You know what I mean? You have a different
Yeah.
relationship with them. Something that I've always been interested in, and there's some research on this, and you might be aware of, is the idea of curiosity.
Yeah.
If you're curious by nature, I think that helps. If you're not curious by nature, if you can cultivate a little bit of curiosity for yourself about circumstances, because they change all the time. You know, you said this before, almost at the beginning. Market forces change, technology changes, political or regulatory schemes can change. So many things can change in any sort of business ecosystem that organizations and people in them find themselves constantly operating on the environment to see what happens, and the environment's operating on them, and you see what happens, and you adjust and you keep moving forward because you know where you're trying to get to. Things make you move off of that path, and you either got to adjust to stay on the path or adjust the path. That's a constant sort of conversation. I think if you can remain curious about those changing variables and factors, you might be able to mine them for value or for information or for use.
Yeah. I think curiosity is one of the prerequisites to solid problem solving. And if you think about it, it's actually advice my father gave me. He said, "You'll be successful in business if you're a good problem solver." That's really what the whole
Yeah,
world wants. All, and it's
yeah,
like, no, that advice is pretty spot on. He gave that to me many years ago, Lou.
yeah, yeah. It's true.
But you know, so I think the curiosity is sort of the preamble to the problem solving, right? You're finding out,
Yeah,
what's going on here, and why is it this way, and who says it's this is the way it should be, and can I test that? Is that policy? Is that law? What is
right, right,
this?
right, right, right.
All right, we've been through all this before. And says these numbers. Can I understand the source of these numbers and who put? So curiosity is a very helpful attitude to have, and there's a technique called the 5 whys,
Right, right.
and I won't go into it right now, but you
Yeah,
can look this up on the internet. But it's a great way to tell me why is this the case, and why is that the impact, and why was that the result? And, again, you can learn this on the internet, but there's the 5 whys is a great way
yeah,
to express your curiosity. I love that point.
yeah. And to not settle for an answer that could be more superficial than answers that
Yes.
exist, to get to
Yes.
something deeper, especially if you have a conversation like that with a team where different members of the team understand different things about a situation.
Right.
Somebody might understand the coding, and somebody might understand the customer, and somebody might understand the supply chain, right? And to each person, that's sort of a complete world. They're the center of, and they look at things that way. So it's interesting when you get a conversation going amongst a group of people with different areas of expertise, maybe Myers-Briggs types or other kinds of differences, how those why questions get answered
Yes. Yes. Well,
and how you can put them together sometimes, can integrate or connect things.
no, I think the expression of your curiosity and using a technique like the 5 whys and thinking about the interconnections and the origins of the answers. The theory is, if I'm not mistaken, is that by the time you ask the 5 whys, you've got the answer to your problem. So I think it's it's a spot on point that says, hey, it all starts with curiosity, basically.
Let me ask you this question: how have you? Well, okay, let me ask. There's a preamble to the question. Maybe all beings, certainly human beings, sure like some predictability or some consistency in our environments, and and I don't know how much we have, or I've ever had, but I don't know how much we have these days. So it can feel disorienting. It can feel troubling.
Yeah.
It can feel unsteady, and it can feel stressful.
Yeah.
So how have you over time? Now here's the question: how have you over time threaded that needle, so to speak, or walked that fine line between No, I can be open mind. I have a mindset of openness and curiosity and questioning without, and then make decisions, make a plan and
Well,
execute it.
that's yeah. So I was going to say, you got to make a decision, right? So I like to open my mind and solicit the input from the right people, the people that I respect and think can teach me about this subject. And a lot of times these are people that work for you, right?
Yeah.
Not people that you work for. And you're trying to gain as much understanding of the situation as you can because they're closer to it
Right.
usually.
Right.
They have more information. And I think people really enjoy the management using them in that fashion. And when you say, hey, give me 5 minutes on this and bring me up to speed on what you think the issues are and how we should best approach these. And if you get that kind of input, no matter what your decision is, if you solicit that kind of input, usually you get people say, well, you know what, he asked me, I said, but he didn't go in my direction, but
Yeah.
I appreciate the interaction that he afforded me. And so I think it really gains buy-in, when you do that kind of solicitation, and it gains a good understanding on your part before you have to make that decision. But ultimately, management has to make decisions. Now, occasionally, no decision is also a decision.
Sure.
You can delay it, or you can say, look, I'm not going to make a decision until it becomes more clear. We get further down the road, or the performance is better, or whatever, then I'll make those
Sure.
decisions. But that is also a decision
Yes,
as
it is.
well.
Yes, it is. Let's talk about getting on the same page with others and ways that there's a way in which you bring yourself, Andy Robinson, in a very personal sense to a role so that you enact the values and the principles that are central to you or core. And so that I'm going to go out on a limb here, but I think I know the answer, how you'll answer this question, so that you feel in sync with yourself or right with the universe in what you're doing. And you're probably trying to create a place where others do too. And that might not work for everybody, but you want to create a place where people can feel that way in the space. And if they don't, we already talked about that. So how do you approach management or leadership so that you can be true to yourself in a role that you have, which might also have other expectations for you?
Yeah. So I think in order to give management and or your peers or board members or whoever a good understanding of you and how to communicate with you and what to expect of you, you've got to sort of have this peace with yourself about, here are my expectations of myself, and really be truthful to that. And I would tell you, I will tell you the biggest mistake I've made in my career, and it's been a great career, but I don't have too many complaints. But I almost wish I'd have never asked friends, peers, my network, etc., what their expectations were of me, or
Really?
or when they gave me their expectations. And usually, they were sort of limiting and narrowing, and this is who you are, this is not who you are, etc. I should have never really paid them much attention, because almost by definition, it's so weird. But you've run into this before, I'm sure. But others can have, I think they project themselves onto you, and they don't necessarily want to, how can I say this, embolden you to go as far as you can go, because they believe in you 100% and they're your biggest fan. It's a lot of times you don't have, even from your friends. I mean, even from your friends, they don't, and even family, right? Even family as well.
I think that's well said. You don't.
And I think it's this is where you can pick up your self-limiting beliefs,
Yes.
From your immediate family and associates and peers.
Yes.
I was fortunate that I had enough friends and family that didn't have those expectations.
That's a good point. Not everyone might be that fortunate.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of them don't. And I've oftentimes worked in sort of poverty situations in inner city, and I'm on a board
On
that does work
disasters,
in
right?
Haiti.
Yeah, yeah.
And oh man, in Haiti, they're the jealousy factor is unbelievable. It's amplified in Haiti. I don't mean to say it's that way here in the U.S., but that is a phenomenon that I've noticed that is just you got to put that out. Just that's garbage. Put that behind you.
So expectations for yourself are what guide you, and you make those clear to your team and to your people that you work for, right? You're saying I'm gonna manage or I'm gonna lead in this way or to these things. These are my expectations for myself. You talked earlier about getting advice from people, but which I think we need to. That's just part of how we learn. But putting two and two together, if you're having a conversation with someone and you're getting their thoughts on a situation, you have to watch for their own limiting factors,
Yes.
because you don't want to think, well, I asked Andy and I respect Andy a lot and he said I should be careful with this, and so I guess I better be careful. Well, maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Certainly not. Maybe not because Andy said so, but maybe I got to think about what Andy said and why he said that,
Right.
and decide if that
Right.
applies to me.
Well, and a lot of times I would say when you hear that from people, and I'm not saying ignore it
Right. Right.
necessarily. I'm saying don't let it define
Skeptical
you.
of it. Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah, and now why are they saying that? And maybe it's useful information that you consider. You put in the category. Well,
Right.
that's a risk factor
Exactly.
for this decision. I need to mitigate
Exactly.
that. Thank you very much. But is
Exactly.
it going to stop me from making this
No.
decision or
Right.
changing my career or
Right.
redefining the brand of the company?
Right.
No, I'm not going to let that those
Right.
those limiting beliefs
Yeah.
extend to me.
Take them and adopt them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Which means you have to be clear on what you want, which is part of your really what we talked about this before. It was your main point of being clear on your place in the universe, clear where you're headed. Without
yeah.
that, you don't have much.
No, you don't,
You can,
because you'll need it. I'm gonna tell you that you'll need it, and there'll be times in your career when things get hard, right? If you find that you haven't been synced up with yourself, and you'll oftentimes be in a position where the skill sets don't match up
right.
with the task at hand. But I think if you say, hey, this is the kind of leader I'm going to be, these kind of decisions I'm going to make, here are my expectations of others, and when we get to something that's difficult, or are we going to play the blame game? Are we going to stop and turn back or retreat, etc.? No, we're going to sit down. We're going to deal with these issues, and we're
Right.
going to continue to press forward, problem solve, and probably at the end of it, be a better team
Right.
down the road. And quitting, giving up, those types of things. No.
Right. So you're on the same page with yourself. You're clear on where you're headed. You're clear on your expectations. You're clear on your values. You're clear on your role. What's it mean to be on the same page with others for you?
For me, it comes across and is most evident in your communications with people.
Mm-hmm.
When you have that, and I always believe in a weekly one-on-one plan and review with my direct reports. And when you come to the table and you start to execute, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, let's start knocking out things, and it's based on a strategy that you built together.
Yeah.
And you have your quarterly goals to achieve that strategy, and you're knocking those out as well. The organization just starts to pick up momentum, and it's felt in the esprit de corps.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, soon after, the numbers look good. Clients are starting to say good things about you. Employees start to say good things about you. Competitors and partners are starting to want to partner with you. and competitors are starting to fear you in a certain sense. They don't want to compete with you on this opportunity because Andy's going after this one, or whoever, whatever company is going after that.
Right.
Then you know that you've got the machine working. And I've on occasion referred to it as a machine, and that's some people think of that as being derogatory.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yeah, like in Good to Great, the flywheel. When the flywheel's working, life is good, right? Life is good.
So part of it is it's hard to describe. Part of it is a feeling. There's an energy, or there's a vibe. There's a wavelength. You feel like you're on in sync with each other. I think that comes from individuals feeling like they're valued in the team. So what they're contributing to the team matters.
Oh yeah.
Right? It adds to what the others contribute, and it's how the team. I really do think there is an experience of the whole being greater than the sum of the parts. There's something that comes together in a way that is multiplicative, maybe not additive. When we work well together. When we work well together.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that what you described is very personal. We're talking about a work situation, but that doesn't lessen how personal this is. It's that esprit de corps. If you've ever had that experience, it's very energizing. It's in you. It's in your gut.
Yeah.
I think largely we're past the point of thinking that people are only cogs in the machine and they can be replaced and they do a job, and there's more to it than that. I think it's good.
I would say if we want to call it a machine, when the machine's working, it feels like a team, right?
Yeah, it does.
It feels like you're almost leaving home to go home, and, at the office, and you don't feel any better or worse when you're going back and forth. I'm dreading to go to office, or I'm dreading. No, you're
excited.
home because you got to do things at home, and now you're excited to go to work the next day.
Energizing,
That's when it's really clicking for people, and there's no dread involved with work, and there shouldn't be. There doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be.
There really doesn't.
I think there's something to that feeling of that esprit de corps that is at the level you're talking about. That's a higher performing team. That has to do, in the literature they would say, it has to do with shared knowledge and shared intent.
Yes.
So if you build shared knowledge because you genuinely are communicating with each other about what you know about a problem or a solution, and again, from different perspectives, whether it's IT, budget, HR, or customer, supplier, from different perspectives, and you're creating a group knowledge out of individual knowledge, a group knowledge from the individual experiences that people have, then you really are creating something novel and unique. It wouldn't exist without those people doing the things that they did. It doesn't exist anywhere. It isn't on the desk. It's not in a. It exists because people have those conversations and create the shared knowledge. They use that shared knowledge to go past that and have shared intent. You get to the point where they operate differently. Let's just assume not every team member operates with every team side by side all day long, every day, over weeks and quarters. Not like a football team, American football team. They're not side by side. Be different parts of the country, right? Have different jobs and maybe report to even different chains of commands. But when you get to the point where Lou says, wait a minute, just found out something about the customer, Andy would want to know that. Right?
Yeah.
When you begin to have enough awareness of what what matters to someone else on the team and why, and then you share information or you help out to say, hey, if you didn't know this, you need to know because it's going to impact you, and let's talk about what we do in the team here. Yeah, that's a high level of functioning and performing, and that feeling that we described of esprit de corps.
Well, it causes me to think that when you have the shared knowledge and shared intent, that you then are able to achieve the shared trust.
Yes.
And once you have the trust there, that I can't be in all places at all times, but I know that when one of my team members out there is that they're asking the right questions and
Yep.
they're feeding back the right information that I
Yeah,
need
that's
to
right.
have.
Good point.
And then you have the trust on your team is in place. And that, to me, a very, very big word. And
Definitely.
as I look back in companies and careers and management that I wanted to work for, plus the word trust. Do I trust them? Do they trust me? And is it there? Yes or no?
If you work with people and feel like they don't have your back, you can only be careful and cautious, and you really need to get out of that situation before too long.
Yeah, quickly.
because you know that many things could become risks, or you're not sure how much of a risk things could be. So you just, if others don't have your back, you just sort of hunker down and try to avoid causing a problem or being a problem. When you know your team members have your back, yeah, the energy is different. You can just kind of free up and
Yeah, it's so different. I mean, if you don't trust or people don't trust you, something bad is going to happen.
yeah, it
And
is.
I guarantee you,
It
it
is.
is going to happen. And then when you trust each other, every day something good happens. Almost every day.
Yeah.
I remember some of my best days with some of the companies I work with. When we achieved this level of trust, it was like, wow, we're something great is happening every single day. And it really did. And it wasn't because I was doing it. It was because
Yeah.
other people that had built the trust, knowledge, and intent were out there. And it's a force multiplier,
It is. It is.
as they say in the DoD world. But
Yes, that's right. So
that's what you want to have.
what's we're lucky enough to experience that. We cherish it and we hope to
Yeah,
recreate it.
yeah.
What helps make that happen? So we want to build trust, but what helps build trust? We want to have shared knowledge and shared intent. What helps create those things that you've used in your experience?
Well, there's a couple things. See, one of the things I like to do is almost as a leader when I first take over an organization is, sort of bare your soul, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they've got to get to know who you really are. And you can do this through, sharing of values, various things like that. I like to spend a lot of one-on-one time. I like to do a lot of management by walking around. And I like to relate to people personally, and I like for them to get to know me personally and what I like, what my family looks like
Right,
and what
right,
are my hobbies, and I
right.
like to get to know theirs, and where did you go to school, and those kind of things, and really build up what I would call the equity in the trust account, right?
Right.
And you
Right.
put a lot of effort into that over time, and then after a while they say, I'm telling this guy things. He's not.
Right.
He's safeguarding what he needs to safeguard, and he's relating to me. He's following up and asking. And I like to do that with people.
Yeah.
I like to get to really know them. I like for them to know me. And if you really, that's sort of first base. If you can get there to first base, and then you can move on and say, okay, great. Now let's think about what we're here to conspire on.
Yeah.
What work issues we need to talk about, and what does success look like, and talk to me about that and things like that. And
Okay.
I haven't mentioned it yet. I'm surprised we got this far, but I like to have people and team think of metrics as being a big KPI guy and key process indicators, but bringing that into the equation as well and saying, let's keep score. We want to keep score on our success, and this is how we're gonna do that and celebrate that, right?
Yes.
It doesn't always. You can't always celebrate and wait to celebrate on the big win. You got to celebrate on doing the right things, leading up to that big win. And I think over a period of time, people say, this guy, he's a personable guy and likes to win, and I can win too, and he's going to teach me and help me, and da da da.
Great, thank you. That's a great answer. Starting with bare your soul, like you said, one-on-one time, management walking around. The personal touch is not for everybody, but that's okay if it's not what
No, it's not.
they'll either
Yeah.
find a place with it or they'll exit. As we talk about what we're trying to accomplish, what are expectations, mine, yours? I love the idea of the measurement because we have might have measures given to us,
Right.
and we might not be able to ignore them, but we might also measure other things that we know matter to the team. And
Hmm.
accomplishing
Hmm.
those things can be highly motivating. And you want to have that conversation, like you said. What are we going to measure because it matters?
Yeah. Well, there's a great, I think this comes from the TQM side of the house and quality. Quality has various schools.
Yep.
One that I don't, I would say one's better than the other. They all have their different applications. Some are great for manufacturing,
Right.
Lean Six Sigma. Some are great for business and business processes like TQM, et cetera. But I would tell you, I think this comes from TQM. It's critical to get with metrics. It's critical in KPIs. It's critical to get people to understand that there's several measures that are sort of the preamble to success,
Mm-hmm.
and those are called process measures, which means you got to do this first.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take the simple sales process. You got to identify X number of opportunities in your pipeline first. And
Mm-hmm.
we need to do that by March. Okay, great. Then you need to qualify these by the next quarter. And then you need to bid, these by the next quarter. And then you end up with the R measure or result measure. And so getting people to understand that, look, we aren't going to be able to celebrate right away, but on the result, but we're gonna take some solace and we're gonna give each other attaboys when you do this process measure.
Sure.
This process, great, you're doing a great job here. We're on the path to success, and then obviously, you got to get them to buy in that these are the right process measures and that they will in fact result
In the result.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so
Lead to
getting
the
that
result.
buy-in is critical.
Well, Andy, we've been talking. We've covered a lot of great stuff. Is there anything else something come to mind, or something you want to talk about that we haven't gotten to?
Yeah, there's just one thing I would say is, so when you take these right hand turns in your career, how do you do that? I mean, you could ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done that, as we talked about a couple of times now, and I think I know the answer to that.
Let me ask you: a right hand turn being significant, or the idea of a right hand turn like a 90 degrees is you're making a big change.
You're making a big change.
A few degrees, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then,
Well,
go ahead. How have you managed those?
let's say that I made the decision that I'm leaving this company, I'm leaving this industry or whatever. A great book that you should read is written by Richard Rohr, who is a monk. It's called Falling Upward. And he basically talks about the maturity that comes with finally having the awakening moment in your life that it didn't turn out exactly like you planned on the day you graduated from B school.
Right.
That your career, or you had this moment or epiphany, maybe is even a better word, that the way you thought your life was going to turn out is not the way it's going to turn out. Right. And everyone should have these moments in their life. But when you have these moments, a few things I think can sort of get you through. And one thing I like to do is get right on the health thing. Just, because if you don't have your health, and this sounds trite, but it really is true. If you don't have your health, you can have all the money in the world. It doesn't matter. You feel crappy all day long.
Yeah.
And money won't fix that. You've got to put that on first base.
Yeah.
You've got, eat right, get your sleep, exercise, stretch, whatever it is, whatever you need. But you've got to put health number one. Nothing makes up for that if you don't have that. So I do that, and then after that, I like to sort of, and I'm the last guy in the world to say this, Lee. You're probably gonna jaw drop, but I actually now meditate.
Okay.
Which is, a pretty big stretch. But I learned it from my wife, and I saw the results it had with her, and I said, I could use some of that right now.
I like that. I like that.
And it really does sort of sort your mind out and actually quash the negative thoughts that you might have as you make these tumultuous decisions and these right hand turns in your life. And then I also think these are great periods of time to really reset your financial goals and revisit that and get your house cleaned up in order, because I've experienced in life that guess who does the best job with your money? Is usually you, and you need to spend some time on that. And these are great periods of time for that. And then after that, and after you get all that sort of going, then let's spend some time thinking about what's next and slow it down. Do these other things. These are more important in life over the long term, and slow it down and have conversations with people and take your time. And while it might be an anxious period of time,
it is.
Try to enjoy it a little bit.
Andy, I was taking some notes here. I didn't think of it until you said those three things. If one's facing a right-hand turn, a momentous decision in your life, those kinds of things you described being in disorder, or if you're not paying attention to them, they become very severely constraining.
Yes.
All right. So if you're facing a tough decision, you have more flexibility and maybe more options if you have these things in order. You might have less flexibility or fewer options if these things constrain you. And to take it one step further, keep these three things sort of in mind, like the night stars, like navigation points. Your health, mental health, and mental wellness, and meditation, and your financial goals. Because if you keep them in order, you have more, I think, room to maneuver in your career.
Yes. Your mind operates better because you've taken care of the important things in life, right? And I'm not at all inferring that by on the financial side that means you're money hungry. No, quite the opposite. You're almost saying, I've taken care of my finances, best way to do everything is set up correctly, et cetera. I know how much I need to make, et cetera. And then you put that out of your mind, right? You're comfortable. I've done all the working out today, and I've got a great night's sleep, et cetera. And I spent some time, meditating and communicating with the universe, God, to whatever belief system you're in. And hey, now I'm ready to go for the day, and I'm gonna think about myself and where my career is going, because I've got my house in order.
Well, what I that's a good way to put it. What I like about it is, you said about the first one, something I think applies to all three. You said about health, nothing makes up for this if you don't have it. And that's absolutely true. I think if your mindset's bad, nothing makes up for that if you have a bad mindset. And if you're in financial disorder or disarray, not because something happened to you, but because you've let it get bad, you've harmed yourself. If you take care of these three things, all work decisions, I'm going to say it this way, your work decisions you can see them more as means to ends.
Yeah.
And what I like about thinking about them as means to ends is you open up more possibilities of means and ends.
Yeah.
Right? Like you said, sometimes you found the next job, sometimes you consulted for a while.
Yeah.
They're means to ends. If you don't have these things in order, you're confused about the means and ends, or you're working on the wrong means and ends. You know what I'm saying? Or you feel like there's just one, I got to get it because everything depends on it. That's not necessarily true.
Yeah, and I think there's the other component too that maybe I've been guilty of in the past, and I don't want to do it again. Is you work, you're trying to get ahead in life, and
Sure.
you're squirreling money away, and you think, but you're really not. If you go back to the parable of the talents, you're not really, doing your self-service with some of the what you've been afforded, and you really should, right? I mean, it's not just the financial part of it. I'm not talking about just putting money away or buying a Rolex. I'm talking about, charitable giving and gifting to children and things like that, because therein lies something that really accretive to your self-esteem and the belief that you're on the right path in life, right?
Yes.
And without that, you're like, what is my life?
Right, it brings us back to where we began. Yes, this is. You could lose your way to being true to yourself if you lose these.
Yeah.
If you lose sight of these things.
You got to make sure that you're settling up with the universe and executing your part as a citizen in it.
As a human being, that's right. And
it's where the world works.
You said settling up. I like that, by the way. Is it accounting? That's a great place to end our discussion, because I think our whole discussion has been maybe what that book encapsulates, which is it's very personal things and how they apply to the business world, and a very different, not apply to much of life. I don't just mean to limit it, but we were talking about work situations and a fresh take on getting on the same page. So I've enjoyed this conversation, Andy, and learned a lot. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I also learned a lot, and I enjoyed the conversation. Likewise, Lou, and I always do enjoy having conversations with you. So
thanks. I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me and sharing your thoughts. And I'm sure it's going to be a fun podcast for listeners. Thanks, Andy.
Great. Stay in touch, okay?
Likewise. All right.
See you later.
Have a good night. Bye-bye. And that's how we see it, my friends. I want to thank Andy for recording today's episode. You can find it at iseewhatyoumean.castos.com, plus all the usual places. Send suggestions and questions through the app. Subscribe and give me a 5-star rating unless you can't, in which case let me know why. And join me next week when we take another look at how to get on the same page and stay there, unless you shouldn't.